You're welcome back. Welcome back to more Live from the Heartland. It is the 1st of August in the year 2009, in the first year of Barack Obama's presidency, where we all have high hopes. And one of the areas that we're waiting for him to take a little bit step forward is in Honduras. As many of you know, there has been a coup in Honduras, and we have two members of La Voz de Bajo, the voice from below, from the people below. And I'd like to welcome Vicky Cervantes and Alexi Lanza. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been, besides trying to see how the White Sox are faring in terms of first place or in the race, I spend a lot of time looking at what's going on in Iran and now what's going on in Honduras, because those have been two exciting world events that have been going on. Vicky or Alexi, why don't one of you fill us in and fill in our listeners the status of what's happened and what is happening in our neighbor to the south in Honduras and Central America.
Yeah. Okay. So, it was more than a month already. There was a coup in Honduras, and we practically we are going back to the 80s, which was uh, the repression in Honduras. We just talked with one of our friends and an organization. The army was in the office. 10 people from the army was searching the organization of the CNTC, which is the Central Farm Workers in Honduras, and it's an organization that we've been working since we was formed in 1980. In the 1980, um, we was formed right after Hurricane Mitch to help the campesinos, the peasants communities and the indigenous communities right after Hurricane. We was try to bring humanitarian aid to the communities. And since then, we've been working very close with the peasants and with the indigenous communities. So are those organizations, the one that we have a really tight relation that's being repressed and they have people in the streets and a lot of them has been arrested. We just find out that two more people was killed in the border, which is where Celaya is right now between Nicaragua and Honduras. They declare a curfew and day at night and the border of Choluteca, El Paraíso, which is where Celaya is right now. And they declare themselves a political prisoners because they don't can go out in the street even during the day. So we have this of this repression, the paramilitary groups that was created during the 80s, which is the 316, has been operate again. If we remind that this group was created by Negroponte and the more repressive forces from Honduras in the 80s. Honduras was a big military base training the contra-revolutionary group from Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala. And top of that, we have the paramilitary group from Honduras, training by the U.S. Army.
I think that's a really important point because since, just to remind the listeners, on June 28th, the Honduran military surrounded the presidential residency in the middle of the night. They went in, they took the president, the elected president and a very popular president of Honduras, out of his house in his pajamas, put him in military vehicles, shot two of what we would call Secret Service men. Two of the presidential security force were killed by the military because they tried to protect their president. They put him in an airplane, flew him to Costa Rica, threw him out on the tarmac in Costa Rica and left. And that, by anybody's definition, sounds like a military coup to me. Since that time, what we've been seeing for 30 days, more than 30 days now, is increasing repression against all the organizations and communities who are against the coup. And like Alexi is saying, a reactivation. People, actually the same personalities are appearing who were part of the death squads, which in Honduras it was the Battalion 316, which was founded by the U.S. ambassador at that time, Negroponte. So we're seeing even the same personalities are coming out from under the rocks, I would say, again, in the military and in the government, and reactivating the whole era of terror in Honduras again.
Well, the kind of the reaction to this from certainly the Organization of the American States, even the United States on one level, was a lot of criticism, and the European Union pulled support. The U.S. pulled back some money supposedly, but obviously the U.S. there's some real implications. Not only did the United States at the School of the Americas, or whatever the official title is now down in Georgia, train these military officers who were involved. But apparently, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has given mixed signals. It's not quite clear to me whether she's really in sync with Obama or not, or if there's something going on. Can you fill us in a little bit more before we get to your event that La Voz de Bajo is putting on? Can you fill us in a little bit about the status of the President Zayala and what's happening? I mean, if you read Narco News, which is a news operation on the web that is really worth getting information. You get a lot of information about Latin America. It's like Zayala's gone back, and the roads are all blocked, and there's a general strike, and it sounds like, well, it's just a matter of days till this thing changes. Can you tell us what you think is happening right now?
Well, the situation right now, I think it is confusing when you see the news, but basically what has happened is that President Zelaya has set up a government in exile, an encampment just on the other side of the border, just inside Nicaragua at the border with Honduras. The army has road blockages and is holding blocking the highways and blocking people from getting there. At the same time, the campesino organizations are also blocking the highway. So in some areas, you have a situation where there's a military blockade of the highway, holding a whole number of little towns and contingents of people hostage. Then there's a campesino block of the highway a little further down, keeping the military from entering other towns. So it's like it's a struggle for control and power. Of course, an uneven struggle when we talk about arms, because the military is armed and the campesinos have machetes, basically. But it's really a struggle for power and the ability to mobilize. Zelaya, therefore, is on the border. The Nicaraguans have allowed a lot of people from Honduras to come across the border to form a protective encampment around Zelaya, and the Nicaraguan government has also provided some security on the border because they're worried that the Honduran army will try and come across the border. As Alexi mentioned, they've been finding bodies of people who had been detained by the army or police. The bodies are appearing in the border area with signs of torture. There continue to be mass mobilizations in Tegucigalpa. The day before yesterday, there was an enormous mobilization of teachers' unions, other trade unions, student organizations, the poor people's organizations, street vendors, all the communities. That was terribly repressed. Both the army and the police went in. They killed a teacher, shot him through the head. They detained an unknown number. We watched the video because of the valiant journalists of Telesur from Venezuela right in the middle of it. They also had their cameras confiscated, but they got video out that shows lines of people being rounded up by the army. So in that way, the situation is, I can't say it's a standoff, but neither does it look like it's going to resolve any moment. Meanwhile, the U.S., we were really hopeful at the beginning when everybody was denouncing, saying, oh, this is terrible, but maybe I see Alexi wants to jump.
The U.S. been too soft. This is a coup. This is very clear. The people who did the coup, they never expected the international community, even the U.S., for the first time in history, the OEA and the ONU will oppose to a coup. This is historically. So what we have been expecting from the U.S. government, from the Obama administration, is to have a more hard line with the people who did the coup, because they are violating the right of the people. They are violating the constitutional right. And it's clear what happening. And also, it is clear that the Department of State have their hands in the coup. They didn't like Zelaya. They didn't like Zelaya. And why they didn't like Zelaya? They didn't like Zelaya because Zelaya was trying to do something similar to what happened in Venezuela, to what happened in Ecuador and in Bolivia, which are this process to change the constitution, to give more power to the people. That's basically the main line to reform the constitution.